whether or not that's going to be a forgivable part of the loan, that's the issue. So, the calculation there, that's something you'll have to work through individually. Tanner, what kind of certification process are you going through? Because I know there's a good faith certification, and I'm interested to see what you guys are doing in particular with that on the payroll.
The simplest versions that we get are the people that are using full year from January 1, 2019 to December 31st, 2019, and we have a tax return. We can go really easily back on that and say, okay, here's what we see the wage expense is. Here's what they say it is. It's within this tolerance. We're fine with that. Otherwise, we're using W-3s and using 941s to try to match up as much as we can. One thing I would tell people with their application is make sure that your ownership of your company matches what you have on the tax return, or have an explanation for it. It can be fine that the ownership changed by 20% because Sally bought Joe's shares by 20% after we filed the taxes. I just make sure that you have that noted and in file, and then everybody that's more than a 20% owner needs to be on the application that's going in there to keep it from getting kicked back from the SBA. Those seem to be the big issues that they're looking for on the front end. We haven't, on a lot of these, haven't gotten into the nuts and bolts of, you came up with X number, we came up with Y number, and they don't match. What are you doing to prove that? We haven't gotten there with the SBA yet, so we're waiting on that.
What about tips? Because I know I think there's a lot of restaurant owners on this webinar.
They should be included in that you can figure that into the calculation that you have.
And what I've read is, I know it's hard, cash tips, a lot of it's, you're not real sure how much it's going to be. So the regulations say a good faith estimate, kind of a general guess at what the cash tips are also included in your payroll costs.
We've been moving through everything. If you can justify it and it just doesn't seem ridiculous, we've been moving it through.
Okay.
So I don't think they're going to be too particular as long as it's within reason. If you say I make $1 a year and I make $999,999 in tips, then I don't know that that's going to fly through. But if you have something within reason, I think it's going on through the system.
Okay. All right. That's kind of I don't want to get into the weeds on this because there's so many things out there about, if it's a small business, if there's affiliation rules, things like that. I'm thinking most people on this webinar are small businesses. So I'm not going to get into any of that. Does anybody have any particular questions so far?
Anybody who has questions, you can unmute yourself and ask them now, or I'm happy to take them from the chat screen too, if you prefer. I think you did answer the question about.
I do.
Okay, go ahead.
Bailey, I have a question. Sorry. I'm like dealing with children, so my camera's off. Let me figure out how to do this.
This is Melanie Mullins. Go ahead.
Hi. So I have a small soap business. We're relatively new. And I'm sorry, I can't tell what's happening.
Go ahead.
So I applied for the I applied for the loan, and I did the little check mark for the EIDL because the size of my business, we don't need, $2 million. It's just me. So, so you were talking, Tanner, about the fact that the banks don't have anything to do with that. Is that correctly?
Yes, you are correct. That goes directly through the SBA. So the EIDL is administered by them. For them, you don't need a banking intermediary in that at all.
Perfect. Okay, so I applied for the PPP. I know I'm not going to get it, but I check marked for the EIDL. Do you guys have any idea how long that's taking? The information that I heard was like 3 days from receiving your application, and that just seemed laughable. So,
right. So what I've heard is there's an advance procedure that's supposed to be in place where you would get a $10,000 advance within 3 days, but I don't think the funds have actually been placed into the SBA yet. I think I think there's a lot going on behind the scenes where that's just not the case yet. So I think it's just going to be as soon as the money's there, then it will be available.
Yeah, I had several clients be really excited that they got a notification that, hey, you're eligible for the express $10,000. And that was last week early in this, and they haven't gotten any money yet. So.
Okay, perfect. So that's normal. And there was some language in the EIDL that was confusing of one said a $10,000 loan, one said up to a $10,000 loan. Do you guys have any clarification on that?
My interpretation, and I'm not as familiar with that since we're not administering it, but that up to 25 was what they were doing without any additional collateral or any additional underwriting, and the 10,000 was just the express payment on there.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome.
And I think EIDL, you can get a bigger loan than the 25,000. It's just you would have to collateralize that loan, and there's a lot more underwriting and not as quick going that way.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And that's where you guys come in with the bank.
Well, the SBA is gonna look for that. So you can get the maximum without a personal guarantee is 200,000, but anything over 25,000 is going to be collateralized against the assets of the business, not real estate, but it's going to be the general assets, inventory, things like that. So,
awesome.
There's a few options there.
Great. Thanks, you guys. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Anybody else have any questions?
Yes, I have a question.
Okay, go ahead.
So I've submitted this question late, and I think you kind of touched on it, but as far as independent contractors, my company hired independent contractors, and then we had 2 employees work for sweat equity ownership of the company. So we paid out some cash, and I have records of the payments, but we didn't file that as payroll or the 944 forms. Like we don't have that.
Did you issue 1099s to those independent contractors?
We didn't. My accountant, we kind of had a disaster of filing for 2019. And my accountant was like, you know what, we're just going to file this as a payroll expense. And that's just kind of, we're just going to lump it. So it was like 12 independent contractors. And then for the people working for Sweat Equity, she just filed an extension. She's like, I can't even get my head around this right now with everything else I have going on. So that's kind of where.
I think the fact that you didn't issue 1099s might pose a problem. What do you think, Tanner?
Yeah, we're even backing out 1099s right now. There's a lot of back and forth, and there's a couple of different interpretations that we have on our end of things. And we're not including the 1099. I think with the sweat equity that you have a hard time proving. You may get the loan, but I don't think you'll get the forgiveness. Does that make sense?
Right.
On things that you may be able to justify it enough to get in on the loan side, which may be what's important. But the forgiveness side, I think you'll see SBA balk at that when it comes time for that.
Right. We literally just hired an amazing numbers admin person who's got all of our payroll super organized for 2020. For 2019, she came on and was super part-time. She came on like halfway through the year and was really part-time. So we don't have, I have records.
Was she there in mid-February?
Yes.
Okay. You might
She started in 2019.
Okay. You might be able to use that information because, it's really, they're going to look at your average monthly payouts. But to qualify, I suggest you definitely try to apply but just have the understanding that you are likely not going to have most of the loan forgiven. It's still a good situation because it's a 1% interest rate and a 2-year term.
Right.
So I
applied for the EIDL and the grant that comes with that. It's really just the PPP that I'm not sure. And literally all we're going to use it for is to pay our rent and to keep our staff on. We're not trying
to. It definitely wouldn't hurt to apply, in my opinion, just to see.
I just can't get past the hurdle of needing those forms for payroll.
Yeah,
seems to be
that's the issue
holdup.
you're going to run into is, like Tanner said, they're just not, a lot of banks are not even going to accept that. So,
Okay, so just go to the bank. I have other independent lenders that are online lenders that were like, hey, we are also qualified to lend you money through this. Like the SBA has green-lighted us to also loan you money. And again, like they just need the payroll forms. So,
right.
all right. So just go to a bank would be better.
Yes. Well, here's the thing about that, though. If you, like Tanner said, almost every bank, I don't know any banks that are accepting clients that aren't current clients for this process.
I
So
bank with Bank of America, and they require that you also have a business line of credit with them before you could have qualified for the PPP through them.
yeah.
And I don't. I just have a personal line of credit and a business account, so that didn't qualify me with them. But I also bank with the credit union, and I just have a personal account with them. But I am a
They might be able to help you. I would definitely, reach out to the contacts you have at those institutions for sure.
okay. All right. Thank you
Yeah,
so much.
and your terms that you get. So I usually would typically discourage you from doing business with a bank that you don't know, but the terms that you're going to get on this loan and the forgiveness are going to be the same for everybody. They can't differentiate.
Exactly.
Bank A can't charge you 1%, and Bank B can't charge you 6%.
Exactly.
They're going
No,
to
I
be the
get
same
that.
terms, and the SBA is going to determine your forgiveness. So if you have an avenue to get to the program via one of those online lenders, as you referred to, I would pursue that because it's
Okay.
not going to be something.
Because I've already
that's gonna be
started that
different.
process. I started that process with them on Friday. I mean, I was like, I had my paperwork filled out Thursday. Like I was ready to go. So
Yeah.
I've been on
That's
top
good.
of this.
That's
But
good.
that it's just, I'd seen the Bank of America qualifications that I didn't actually qualify. And then, again, just waiting. All of no other credit union even had information on Friday to have you be able to apply. Like I was on a callback list from another credit union. So yeah.
Well,
Just
best
trying to
of
make sure
luck
I get
for
the
sure.
application. And thank you. All right. Well, I appreciate your help. Thank you so much, guys.
Definitely. Anybody else have any questions?
We're happy to take voice questions or chat questions. I'm at the ready to read chat questions if anybody would rather write their question. Just a note, we are recording this presentation as well, and we can make it available for you to watch again or to share if you like. All right. Well, I do not see or hear any more questions from anyone.
I have a question.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. Let me see if I can get my camera so you can see me. The company I work, there you go. Now you can see me. The company I work for, I'm a 1099, and we had this little call yesterday where she tried to explain it to us. It was really quite confusing. So what basically it sounds to us like they want us to do is apply for the government loan, the PPL. I think I'm saying that right. My mind's fried right now. That we're going to get our paycheck from the government, but still continue to work while this 3-month process is going on. And she made it sound like, oh, just go ahead, apply for this. You're going to get this $10,000 grant. It's going to be dropped in your account in 3 days. And you'll be fine. Just make sure you spend that money on your payroll, because technically as a 1099, you are your own company and you hire yourself so you can pay yourself. So is that really how this goes?
They
Not
need
really.
to be repaying. That $10,000 is a loan to you, Karen. You would owe that money back. So unless your company is paying your loan back for you, you're working for free and taking out a loan on it.
Yeah.
So if they're not
And
making that, yeah.
The terms of that loan are not the 1 to 2 year maturity. That's the economic injury disaster loan. Okay, so that's the $10,000 advance, but that's 2.75. Is that right, Tanner? I think
so.
And there's payments are going to be delayed on all of that. You've got a year before payments are required on that loan, and there's 6 months before payments are required on the PPP loan. But it's still a loan. It's not free money. That's what you got to remember. This is really none of this is really free money.
That's what everybody keeps saying. Oh, get the grant, get the grant. It's free money. And I'm not getting that. The government doesn't hand shit out like that.
It's a loan. It's not a grant.
It's a loan.
That's for sure.
Yeah, it's a loan. You should be prepared to pay anything back. All a portion can be forgiven, but until we start seeing those in practice, I'd assume I had to pay it back.
Exactly. Even the provisions of the act that talk about the loan forgiveness, there's a lot of holes in that, and there's a lot of ways they could probably default you for not, doing certain things with the money, not using it in a certain way. If you do something with your business, if you're not back up to full capacity with your employees by June 30th, there's lots of things. So I've been telling my clients, don't act like this is free money. Put it in an account and use it to pay expenses, but don't just think it's automatically going to be forgiven, because there's not even guidance out on the loan forgiveness portion of the act yet. There's not very specific stuff out there yet.
Okay.
Hey, Melanie, I saw your question.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Karen.
No, they were making it sound like, oh, just go apply for this loan, and you'll in 3 days get this $10,000, and you can pay yourself and keep working for us. So basically, I would be paying myself via this loan. They're not going to pay this $10,000 back. That part was confusing to me too. And now, second part of my question is, since I'm a 1099, we will know by Friday if we qualify for unemployment, because normally subcontractors don't. Is that something you're hearing as well?
Well, the time frame is not set in stone, but that's what we anticipate. And that's going to come from the state. That's not coming from the federal government. The federal government is influxing money into the states, into the unemployment compensation divisions. And that's going to come from Governor Lee, is going to put something down about that.
Excellent. Okay.
So yes, that's what we anticipate, but there's no way to know. Now there's also grants. I don't think there's any yet in Knox County. There's grants at the state level, the local level, county level, that people are trying to get into place as well. So there's other options other than, what we're talking about here. Stuff to think about.
And Melanie, I saw your question pop up, and I'm not as familiar with the EIDL, so I'd encourage you to read on it. But and Sarah, you can speak to this too. My interpretation on that is it's a loan. It is a loan. Okay, yeah. It's not a guarantee.
So here's the confusion. There's so much information out there. This whole $10,000 situation is just an advance on the loan. Okay, so it's you're going to get $10,000 faster than you're going to get the rest of the money, but it's not forgivable. It's not just free money. That's,
and on top of that, it's that you're eligible. I think the way.
You're breaking up, Mel.
Not eligible for the amount. Because most.
Okay, so.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Advance payment. Yeah, let me read on this a little bit and see if I can answer some questions about this.
Most of the businesses.
Here's the thing about the advance.
So.
Right, the advance, the $10,000 advance can be used for sick leave, maintaining payroll, meeting increased costs to obtain materials, making rent or mortgage payments. Okay, so if you do certain things with that advance money, which we're not very clear on exactly what all that means, then the $10,000 would be a grant. But there's lots of things that go into that. So that's what I keep saying. It's like, it's not really free money. There's a lot of guidance that's going to come out. And you're going to have to be able to prove that you use the money for very specific things, or they're going to require it to be repaid. That's kind of the issue. So that's just the $10,000. Now, if the loan is denied and you get the $10,000 anyway, and you don't get the rest of the money, then that is a grant if you use it for the right purposes. rent, mortgage payments, but part of it, in my opinion, which is not clear yet, you can't be paying principal payments with this money. I'm not there's not a lot of guidance out there yet on the EIDL, but if you do get the money, I would make sure you're in a position where you can repay it, just to be safe about it.
And can you share, wherever you're reading from, can you share the link to that? Because I haven't been able to find any details on what they're wanting us to use the EIDL for.
Well, that's kind of an interpretation that we've all kind of come up with based on reading the act and reading the regulations that are out there. There's a lot more regulations that are coming. They're just not out yet.
Got it.
If you want to follow my Facebook page, I post some stuff about things like this. We do a newsletter. If you want to shoot me an email, I can put you on my newsletter list, and that might help too.
Awesome. Thanks.
We can also post some links on our website. We do have a COVID-19 resource page on the realgoodkitchen.com website, and we will update it with any further links that we can that we get from Sarah.
Yeah.
You can also follow Sarah on Facebook, Sarah R. Johnson Attorney, right? That's your
yes.
That's your okay.
Yeah.
Also, just a side note, as a best practice, we think it's a good idea to open up a separate account for these two funds and use them only. The only thing that goes into that account is money either from the EIDL or the PPP, and the only thing that comes out is stuff that you think you can get forgiven on that. And just make it cleaner so you don't have everything else, and it's easier to prove it when it comes down to prove it. We're not requiring it, but it's just something that we think is going to work better.
Right. Probably the most up-to-date you're going to find information on the EIDL is going to be on the SBA.gov website. They're going to have the information there as much as they can. Of course, that website crashes all the time. So if you can actually get it to work. But I think a lot of you guys are smaller businesses, so that might be something to think about, but absolutely what Tanner said, keep it in a separate account and don't just think that it's a grant. You can just spend it on whatever you want. And even if you spend it on what they say is forgivable, that may not be the case in 6 months when they're looking back at this to see what the forgiveness is, because that procedure is going to look a lot different than it does now. There's going to be a lot of holes there's going to be a lot of issues that are going to come out that they haven't thought about yet. And that's kind of what happened since this act started in Congress to where it is now. There's just a lot of things that change every day. And especially with something that was passed so quickly, there's going to be a lot of regulations that are going to come later on once we get into the loan forgiveness process. So if it sounds too good to be true, it is too good to be true. That's what I always tell my clients. I mean, don't count on it being just free money.
Yeah. And that's what's slowing down the process a little bit from the bank side, because we can't just take the application and turn around and send it to the SBA. We've got to do a minimal amount of underwriting, because if these things don't get forgiven, we've still got a loan on the books. Exactly. And if SBA doesn't perform on their guarantee, which sometimes they don't, then we've got a loan on the books that we've got to figure out. And some of these, we've had a few 7-figure requests come in on stuff, so it's real money that's out there. It's a little bit scary. So bear with us.
Definitely. Any other questions in particular? Are there any 501c3s out there on this webinar? It applies to that too, if you're working for a nonprofit.
All right. Well, I guess if we don't have any other questions, we can wrap up. Please feel free to submit additional questions. I'll put my email address in the chat. Sarah will also be happy to take questions through her Facebook page. Thanks everybody for attending. Thanks to Sarah and Tanner for all of the information. We really appreciate it. Maybe we can consider doing some follow-ups as we know more, but we will we'll keep you posted.
Absolutely.
Thanks so
Thank
much.
you guys.
Thank you.
Good luck. Take care.
Bye-bye.